Okay, let's jump in. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are cracking open what is basically the official roadmap for a huge digital transformation, the guide, getting started with SAP S/4HANA 2025.
And this isn't just a technical manual, we should be clear on that. It's really the strategic entry point for figuring out how you even begin a move to S/4HANA 2025.
Right. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to distill the main pathways to get there, dig into some of the really tough technical hurdles, and then look at the long-term plan. Because getting there is one thing, but staying current is a whole other battle.
It really is. And what's interesting is how the guide immediately forces you to make a choice. It's not a single path. It's more of a decision tree. And it all depends on where you are today and, frankly, how much change you're willing to take on.
Let's start right there then, the pathways. The guide lays out, four main scenarios, covering everything from a totally clean slate to just a small hop.
Exactly. 4 main scenarios that define your whole project. First, and this is probably the most common for companies that have been on SAP for a while, is the system conversion.
Okay, so what is that?
That's for an existing SAP Business Suite customer. The idea is you take your current ECC system, the one that's running the business right now, and you convert it directly into an S/4HANA system. You're trying to keep your data, your history, all of that.
And then there's a more specialized option, right? The Selective Data Transition. Sounds complicated.
It is. This is sort of the third way. It's unique because it lets you redesign your business processes from the ground up, but you only migrate a selection of your old data. It's like a hybrid approach, a massive cleanup opportunity.
And the guide is really clear on this point. This is not something you do with your internal IT team alone.
No, absolutely not. The document is explicit. You have to bring in SAP Digital Business Services or, very specialized partners. The complexity and the tools required are just beyond what a normal organization has licensed or on hand.
So if that sounds a bit daunting, I imagine a lot of people look at the next path, which is surprisingly popular, just starting over.
That's the one, the new implementation. This is for a brand new SAP customer, of course, but also for an existing one who just looks at their old, heavily customized system and says, you know what? It's time for a fresh start. You install a clean S/4HANA 2025 system and just migrate the essential data.
And the last one is the easiest, I assume? The upgrade?
Yeah, that's the straightforward path for anyone who's already on an older version of S/4HANA. They're just moving up to the 2025 release. Simple as that.
Got it. And we should probably mention, just for context, that this whole discussion, we're focusing on the on-premise product.
Yeah.
But the guide does frame it as part of a bigger family with the S/4HANA Cloud Public and Private Editions.
Right. But for today, the real complexity, the real story is in these on-premise installations. The fact that SAP even needs all these different paths tells you a lot about the kind of technical debt their customers are sitting on.
Okay, let's go deeper on that. Segment 2. Let's talk about the toughest path, that system conversion. If you're running SAP Business Suite now, what are the non-negotiables? What hurdles do you have to clear before you could even think about the conversion?
The guide lists a few, and they are absolute showstoppers if you're not prepared. First, your system absolutely must be on Unicode.
And if it's not?
Then you have a pre-project. You have to complete a Unicode migration first, which is a project in its own right, with its own budget and timeline, just to get to the starting line.
Wow. Okay, what's next?
The next one is dual stack systems. So if you're running a system where your main application server and, say, a Java portal share the same database, S/4HANA 2025 just doesn't support that.
So another pre-project.
Another pre-project. You have to perform what's called a dual stack split first. Again, it's a technical hurdle that eats up time and money before the S/4HANA project clock even starts.
So assuming you've sorted out the architecture, what about your current software version? Do you need to be on the latest and greatest ECC?
Not the absolute latest, but there are very strict rules. The key is you have to be on SAP Enterprise Resource Planning 6.0 on one of the enhancement packages. If you're on something older, you're looking at a much more complex multi-step approach. The single-step conversion really depends on you having kept relatively current.
Okay, this brings us to what I think is the most interesting part. It's not technical, not really. It's the simplification item catalog. This is where things get really challenging.
Oh, absolutely. The catalog is the rule book for your business. It's not about the technology anymore. It's about your processes. You're adopting a new data model, and the catalog basically lists every single old business process that has been changed, replaced, or just removed entirely in S/4 or not.
So you could be running the conversion tool, and it literally just stops and says, nope, your inventory management process relies on a function that doesn't exist anymore. Go redesign it.
That's exactly it. It's pure change management disguised as an IT requirement. It forces a functional review of the entire business.
So how do you even prepare for that?
There are tools. SAP pushes the SAP Readiness Check very hard. You run this tool early, and it scans your system. It looks for which simplification items are relevant to you, analyzes your custom code, checks your add-ons. The output is basically your mandatory to-do list.
And once you've done all that homework, all that redesign, then you use the main tool.
Then you use the Software Update Manager, or SUM. That's the workhorse. It does the technical conversion. And importantly, if your database isn't already on SAP HANA, SUM handles that massive database migration as part of the process.
Okay, let's pivot from all that complexity to the maybe simpler path, the new implementation. You skip the conversion pain, but you take on a whole different challenge.
Right. With a new implementation, the install is clean. It's simple. But the huge effort shifts to data migration. You have to get all your master data, your open transactions, out of the old system and into the new one.
And what does SAP give you to help with that?
They include the SAP S/4HANA Migration Cockpit in the license. And this is a big deal. It's a tool designed to help you transfer business data from both SAP and even non-SAP systems. It's a strategic nudge to get you to standardize your data on the way in.
And for the configuration of this new clean system, the guide has some strong opinions.
It does. I mean, you can configure everything from scratch, custom. But SAP strongly, and I mean strongly, recommends using SAP Activate and SAP Best Practices.
Which is basically a set of pre-configured business processes.
Yeah.
But isn't there a trade-off there? If everyone uses best practices, you lose your unique competitive edge.
That is the core strategic trade-off, yes. Efficiency versus differentiation. By using best practices, your setup is way faster, and more importantly, your future updates are much, much simpler. But you do sacrifice some of that deep custom logic. The guide pretty clearly implies that for most companies, the long-term cost of high customization just isn't worth it.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears. We've migrated. We're on S/4HANA 2025. Now what? How do we stay current?
This is where we have to be really precise with language.
Yeah.
People throw around upgrade and update all the time, but in the S/4HANA world, they mean very different things, and that difference drives your budget.
The guide is super strict about this, isn't it? Break down this three-tier system for us. The release, the feature package stack, and the support package stack.
Absolutely. Think of it as moving from major disruption to minor maintenance. At the top, you have the release. That's the big one, like S/4HANA 2025 itself. It only happens once every 2 years.
And because it's every 2 years, it's packed with the biggest changes.
The biggest. Huge numbers of new features, major enhancements, things getting replaced. A release is a massive project. It requires deep, thorough testing, custom code adaptation, and almost always comprehensive end-user training. It's an upgrade.
Okay, so that's the big one. What's the next level down? The updates that happen in between those 2 years.
Those are the feature package stacks, or FPS. SAP ships 3 of these for each major release, so you get FPS 01, 02, and 03. This is how they deliver innovation during that 2-year window.
And what's the impact of an FPS? It's not a full upgrade, but it's not just a tiny patch either.
Exactly. It's the middle ground. It still requires serious effort. You absolutely have to do regression testing to make sure your existing processes don't break. You'll want to test the new features you plan to use. There might be a little bit of user training needed. It's a project, but a much smaller one.
Got it. And that leaves the smallest, most frequent one, the support package stacks.
Or SPS. These start coming out after the 3 FPS updates are done. They're mostly just software corrections and legal changes. There are basically no new features.
Which means the effort to apply them is minimal.
Minimal. Very little testing, almost no training required. The guide basically says you should be applying these regularly just for system stability. It's pure maintenance.
This has been super helpful. So for anyone listening, as you're starting this journey, the key takeaway from the guide is that there's a ton of help available, and the SAP Help Portal is the place to start.
That's your ground zero. It's where you find the installation guide, the upgrade guide, the conversion guide, and it's where you get access to those critical tools we talked about, like the Simplification item catalog and the SAP Readiness Check. You can't plan a budget or a timeline without them.
You know, thinking about the complexity, especially of the conversion path,
Yeah.
it's not just about installing software. It's about using that simplification item catalog to fundamentally change how your business runs. And that brings up a final big question for you to think about.
Right. You have this massive release only every 2 years, but in between, you get these 3 feature package stacks. So the question becomes, do you adopt new features incrementally with each FPS, spreading out the change in the training?
Or Do you skip them to keep things stable and then just deal with a massive disruptive tidal wave of change every 2 years when the next major release hits?
It's a huge trade-off. It's continuous, smaller changes versus less frequent but much bigger shocks to the system. And the right answer really depends on your company's tolerance for risk and its capacity for change.
A really strategic question to end on. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.